So it is the 30th of December 2023 and Mr. Mark and I have decided to go to Doncaster Racecourse. For within Doncaster Racecourse there is a toy fair and that was kind of what we'd aimed for. I've dragged myself out of bed. That was alright though. It was a wet and rainy day, but we didn't get too wet whilst we were waiting, so that was good. And we queued a little bit more to get in, but actually we got in pretty quickly. In fairness to them, the queue was getting longer as we were waiting. Hard to tell how many people were already in there, but anyway, we were sort of chomping at the bit to get in, and eventually in we got, of course. So, what I've tried to do with the video section here is just do a sort of complete walkthrough of the entire site, and it is big. I didn't even attempt this last time I was there, because last time I was there I only had a couple of hours, really, because it took me so long to find the place, park up, get in. But there's easy parking and free parking just outside it, which was a doddle, and we just crossed the road, got in the queue, went straight in, having paid our way in. And I've started here in sort of one far corner of the sort of the main area, and as you can see, it's just filled to the brim with cars, all sorts of stuff. Doncaster's nice in the sense that it's got a really good range of tables. There are tables that are sort of, dedicated railway type tables, if that's your thing. There are comics. But there is a lot of more sort of modern stuff, or if you like, more sort of modern retro stuff, if that makes sense. So you might caught a little glimpse of some Terrorhawks items there. But also a lot of models, either sort of kit models or, sort of pre-made models and so on. Just saw some Teletubbies. Nice. There is anything and everything you can imagine has a home here, and I've actually slowed down the speed of this walkthrough to 60% because I was charging along, because I was conscious of the fact that I was going to run out of recording room on my phone if I didn't get my skates on. So what I've done is I brought the speed down a bit to try and reduce your sort of motion sickness factor. And I may not talk through all of this because it's going to take a good sort of 20 minutes. But I wanted you to try and get a sense of just how much stock is actually brought into this place for this event. If you go early bird, then you can get in about a couple of hours before everyone else and just have a really good look around and, have a sort of pick at what's there. And I think that a lot of trade-to-trade deals get done during that period for obvious reasons. But, just trying to show you here just the sorts of range of stuff that these stalls are all carrying. So we've had some Lego, we've had trains, we've had die-cast cars. It's quite a different feel to Bolton. I was chatting to Mark about this, and Bolton is there are still a lot of stalls at Bolton, but it's a slightly different feel to it. There aren't quite so many modern toys in Bolton, I think it's fair to say. Whereas I've now got a little bit more of a feel for Doncaster. This is only the second time I've been, but I had more time today. I still didn't get round it all until about 1:30, because I was stopping to chat to people, which is one of the advantages. So I was chatting Thunderbirds and stuff with people and all sorts of stuff. And it's just interesting to do that because obviously these are very, very knowledgeable people. I had a very long chat about Ulysses 31 with a very nice gentleman. And it's quite interesting in the sense that a lot of the people who are selling here do not have cards that you can take away with you. So, if you want to be able to buy from these guys, you have to really make the effort to get there. Just seen a Tracy Island. If I see any more of those, I'm probably going to have them coming out of my ears. It's a sort of Star Trek model there. But anything and everything is represented here, and it does go quite old. You can find some really, really old stuff. There was some Johnny 7 stuff that I saw, and I thought of Mark when I spotted that. There's stuff like $6 Million Man as well. All sorts of things that will catch your eye. And I saw so much stuff that I did not come away with. And that's not just a money thing, although obviously, that is a factor. It's also just the simple fact, JR21 Thunderbird I just spotted, because now I know what they look like. There's this sort of the whole issue with just needing to make the choice and then trying to remember where it is on the floor to go back to it. So it's one of those things where if you have a list, it's helpful to have the list with you, I think, because you're going to need it if you want to really sort of address it. Oh, look who's here.
Say hello, Mark.
Hello! You have some good chats in the car going to and from lesson. So, yeah, I mean, I often go into these with a couple of things I want to get, and I did get a couple of things that I meant to get, but I also, of course, inevitably tripped across a few pieces where I just thought, I have not seen that before, I will probably not see that ever again, therefore I should really get it now. And that's where things get trickier, because then you sort of think to yourself, well, should I wait? Should I not wait? What else might I see? And then, of course, if you're like me, you end up running around like a silly beggar in the last half an hour when everyone's just starting to pack up, and they do start to pack up a little bit before the closing time of the show, because, of course, they want to get away at the end. And they've got a lot to pack away, and it probably took them like an hour to set up in the first place. So, bear that in mind, that you've got to get there in good time if you want to see everything. That's just the way of it. So I will do a separate video on what I actually ended up picking up. Some of which was intentional, some of it not so much. Another interesting thing that I discovered today, which maybe I sort of already half knew, is that some of the people who are selling here are not really selling as a business. They are there selling sort of surplus elements of their own private collections, because anyone can get a table here. You just pay for your table, and then you've got your table for the day. That's it. So it is a way to sort of, if you had lots of spares or something, you didn't know any other way to do it, and you didn't fancy paying auction house prices and so on, you could get yourself a table, get yourself set up and sell through that. It's an option. And as you can see, there are all sorts of people selling in all sorts of manners. You can have a really good rummage through lots and lots of boxes, and try and spot something. And it was quite funny because early doors I spotted an old corgi bat bike in a sort of random £5 box. And so I passed that on to Mark, because Mark's doing quite a few bits and bobs with his Blue Harvest Toys channel at the moment to to sort of do up some of these the old sort of bat vehicles. So I thought he'd probably appreciate that one. So I sort of grabbed that. But that was one of those classic examples where, had I not taken a moment just to really sort of scan the box of stuff, I wouldn't have called that at all, because I wasn't looking for it for myself, because I've already got an example of it. So, it's, if there's more than one of you, I think that helps. If there's one of you who can look for something that the other person is looking for, that helps even more. I mean, there are lots and lots of things that I see as I go around these tables where I sort of think, oh, I know who'd like that. And then it's a question of running back and trying to find them and direct them in that direction. But I mean, even now I can see stuff on this footage that I didn't notice whilst I was there. It's mind-boggling how much there actually is to take in. So I think it's good to get to know the sort of people that are likely to carry the stuff that you want, because otherwise I think it's actually quite difficult sometimes to really track it down in the time that you've got available to you. I mean, I suppose in a sense, I'm kind of making the case here for rocking up early doors and actually paying a bit extra to get in on the early bird, because if you've never been here before and you want to have a really good look around, that would probably give you the best chance of actually being able to kind of mentally take it all in. You see, I'm not even out the main hall yet. I'm about halfway through the length of this video. I'm not even out of the main hall. Assuming this is lined up right, I quite like this stall here. Lots of Daleks, lots of Trek, lots of Space 1999. Didn't buy any of it. But again, it's the sort of thing where I know that if I come back, the odds are it's going to be the same people. Because, you know, the people who go to Doncaster will be the people who go to Doncaster. Now, that being said, there's more than one Doncaster exhibition during the year. So, you know, whether or not they're all there every single time, I couldn't swear to you. But, you know, it's possible. It's possible that is the case. And I'm quite sure that a lot of the commercial sellers will tend to turn up to every one, because they kind of shoot themselves in the foot if they didn't, if everyone else is there, you know. So quite a few of this is the sort of the kind of railway end of things, I think it's fair to say. But again, you know, it's not, there is no rhyme and reason to it in this sense. You know, anything can be anywhere. You just have to keep your eyes above you. That's a magic roundabout figure. That just caught my eye as I was going around. I didn't get it. But there are so many things to catch your eye. And off this main hall, there are a couple of little areas which are sort of off to the side of it, which aren't perhaps as obvious. But then there are two other bigger areas which you can't really miss, but you have to kind of aim yourself at. Nice Dinky Thunderbird 2 lurking on the top shelf on that stall there. So as you can see, you know, we're getting into the more modern sort of stocks here. And I did chuckle to myself because I heard one little lad go, "Pops!" at one point, in reference to Funko Pops, of course, which for me hold absolutely zero interest whatsoever. I would hold my hands up to that one. But for him, it was the most excited I've ever heard anybody about Funko Pops, bless him. So that made me chuckle. And you do hear some fascinating conversations as you wander around. You just sort of pick up on little fragments. And I was saying to Mark that I heard somebody mention that they were sort of getting a sort of a starting train set for, like, you know, £1,200 or something. And you just think, wow, you know, there's obviously a lot of money in that sort of market if you're an enthusiast for that sort of thing. And this is what this place does. It just caters to all sorts of different enthusiasts, you know, people with really deep knowledge of the sort of stuff that they're looking for. And I heard people who were hunting for particular wagons and sort of particular variants of something in a different colour that they'd not seen before. I nearly picked up yet another sort of Battle King that had a slightly different colour interior, and I stopped myself in the end because I just thought, no, that's not high on my priority list right now. But you know, you do see all sorts. And you may be getting the impression from some of this footage that it was very busy. And yes, it was very busy at points and in certain places. There are some sort of bottlenecks. Inevitably, I suppose, you know, if there's a particularly popular stall that's sort of attracted a lot of attention, that can happen, certainly. But generally speaking, it all kind of moves fairly well, you know. One thing I should mention here, and I noticed a card reader on one of my sort of walk past there, because a lot of these places will only take cash. But equally, there are some that will take cards. So ideally, you need both. You can get cash from the front, I believe. But Mark was looking for sort of cash machines locally as we were heading in, and he couldn't really immediately identify any. So there is a slight question mark on that front, that if you do arrive without any cash, you may find yourself a little bit more limited than you might like. So it's probably best to be bringing both with you. Airwolf helicopter. How did I miss that? Sorry. But this is exactly my point. This is actually one of the slightly frustrating points of doing this exercise, is that when you come to watch your footage back, your eye immediately spots stuff that you didn't, because I mean I was literally on my feet from 10:30 through until nearly 3 o'clock, and I had one can of drink and nothing to eat all that time. So I was probably a little bit sort of giddy by the end of it. It has to be said. But this is the nature of the place. You do kind of get swept up in it and carried away with it when you're desperately trying to take it all in and figure out where the stuff that you're interested in actually is sitting. And again, I think people do tend to come back to the same sorts of places. Because there was a guy whose stall I remember from last time, which ironically I didn't look at quite as much this time, but he was in the same place. So I think people probably try and get similar haunts if they can each time. I don't really know how the system works in terms of allocation, but maybe you can ask for a particular spot. I don't know. Somebody might tell me in the comments, perhaps, what the case is with that. But that gives you an idea of how much more there is, because that's a sort of gap. So that's a side area there, away from this main hall area that I'm looking at here, and that is just, there's a whole other section there with more tables, more stuff. This guy's still I like. He's got quite a few sort of Star Wars stuff. Again, I am getting to that point now, I think, where I'm starting to look for what I would call light upgrades. I've got a couple of small Star Wars die-cast items that are banged up to all heck, because I've had them for years, because they were mine. But of course, this is the ideal sort of place to look for fresher examples of ones that you grew up with. So that if you're trying to display them, you can actually get a better example of them than you've got already, for your display purposes. Obviously, you can hang on to your originals for sentimental reasons, if nothing else. But it's sometimes nice, I think, just to be able to upgrade some of the stuff that you've actually got out, so that you can be sort of happier that you've got a sort of a better looking display, if that's the sort of thing that's important to you, obviously. So I'm getting down now to the bottom corner of the main hall. So this is only the main hall. This is the bottom corner of it. And so I'm going to do a jump cut in a second and bounce to a different section. So here we have that side area that I was talking to you about. And this is just the first one of them. There are a couple of little sort of offshoots. So again, lots of sort of die-cast toys here. Didn't get a huge look at this section, actually. Probably a section I should have devoted a bit more time to. But I think there were some people still setting up when we arrived. So I didn't see so much of this. Some really nice helmets in this section here. Various bits and bobs. Not quite as heavily populated. I mean, it's interesting because in theory they could probably get more tables in there. Some couple of nice B-wings there on display. And he had some Star Wars card backs as well that Mark was interested in, I believe, at one point. And then we get into the first of these sort of secondary areas where there's a little bit slightly heavier concentration of cars and things here. As you can see, there's more and more stuff here. But I think you've just got to be prepared to put in the footwork. I mean, when I arrived today, I sort of said to myself, right, I'm going to actually walk around and try and take it all in this time and actually sort of get around everywhere. But even then, it took me a long time because you get chatting to people. So I didn't actually start filming until later in the afternoon. Of course, some Britain's space stuff there. And so it was only sort of later on that I started filming like this. So, this is kind of mid-afternoon when I was just trying to catch people before they started fully packing up. And and it was still going full swing. There was still a lot of stuff happening. And I was just trying to get around it all just so that I could show you guys just the sheer scale of what Doncaster is. Because as you can see, there's all these Transformers here. I do wonder whether or not some of this is sometimes people just selling their collections because they're trying to downsize or whatever. It's kind of hard to know the difference sometimes. Because not everyone necessarily carries loads of branding and so on each time. So, I did at one point film Gareth at Cosmic, strangely enough. But I think I've missed the section of the video because Gareth was present and was very kindly furnishing Mark and myself with additional funds so we could actually get some stuff. Because even though I came reasonably well prepared, you see stuff, and I did get some bits from here, which I'll show you in my sort of pickups video. And there is haggling to be done. I think it's one of the sort of the fun things about this nature, and sometimes the haggling is freely offered without you having to ask. Other times you might have to pluck up courage and be a little bit cheekier. But generally, people, obviously, generally speaking, rather, the people who are here to sell to you. They don't want to have to take it all home again. They don't want to have to pack it all back up again. So, didn't get the robotics. Many people who know me would be surprised at that, but I didn't get the robotics because the boxes are really big. Very, very cheap stuff, though. If you want to have a play with some robotics, it's very cheap. Because no one seems to particularly care about it. And Mark and I were having that conversation in the car as well, actually. It's how do prices get set? What ends up costing a lot, what doesn't? Is it sort of real scarcity, or is it sort of artificial scarcity because one time on eBay something sold for a lot of money and that sort of price level just kind of stuck there, because eBay is used as a reference source, like it or not. It is used as a reference point for a lot of people's pricing. See Millennium Falcon there. We're getting into the last sort of section here, and I'm probably getting giddier and giddier here at this point. But ironically, I came to this section late myself, so it will slow down even more here because I'm looking through it, trying to spot stuff that that I haven't actually seen to this point. There's some nice jets and stuff there. I'm going to drag my son to this one day, but a lot of this I hadn't sort of seen to this point. So I'm actually sort of doing this just to have a look around myself whilst I'm trying to sort of film it in a sort of semi-subtle fashion. I mean, the first time I came, I didn't really try and film because I wasn't really sure what the rules and regs were, but nobody had a go at me for just kind of holding a camera at chest height and just sort of, wandering around. So I don't think they're too sort of anti it particularly. It would have been easier to do it shortly after I'd arrived. There was no two ways about it. That would have been a lot easier had I tried to do that, I think. But it is what it is. And this does give you a more realistic feel for just how many people are there. But I mean, there are people with mobility scooters and stuff getting by in there pretty easily. The gangways are wide enough for that, and I smiled because there was a little dog being pushed in a pram, bless it. At one point, just made me smile quietly to myself. So that was nice to see. So there's a lot of tolerance. Everyone's very good natured. Massively wide age range in there as well. From the very young to the very old, attending to look for things, which is nice to see as well. So all in all, when all's said and done, it's Doncaster's quite an easy place to get to. Touchwood, I had a really sort of smooth road in this morning, and it was easy enough to get out of as well. But it's easy access off the A1. You can sort of go along the M62 and then drop down. It's dead easy. And there are people, there are dealers. I mean, I saw a dealer from Wales was in there. So I mean, there are a lot of people bringing their stuff to Doncaster for you to have a look at. So, if you wanted to try a toy fair and you are this end of the country, this is definitely a way to go because there is definitely a huge amount to see here. I even saw one of my Starbirds for the first time, and some Micronauts and stuff like that. But again, I just didn't get a chance to get back to them. It's quite annoying now. But again, every time you go to one of these, you're going to have a slightly different adventure. Every time it's going to be that a little bit different. You'll see slightly different stuff. You'll see some familiar faces. But it's all good stuff. And some of it is very bargain basement-y stuff, but other stuff is better. And pricing wise, a lot of it is price to sell. I genuinely feel that a lot of it is price to sell. Some other elements of it, I think, are possibly taking the Michael slightly. But then if you do have eBay on your phone, you can quickly check and get an idea of whether or not it's worth it. But then of course you don't have to pay postage when you're here. You just crack on and do it, and it's done. And you don't have to pay a £5 to get the thing to you, or multiple £5 if you want to buy more than one thing. So it's worth bearing that in mind. If you're wondering about whether or not it's actually worth the cost to actually get there and get in the first place, just think about your eBay postage costs over the last few weeks. Cheers for now, and have a good 2024.